Imagine being a new student in the health profession. You are starting clinical rotations for the first time and are a little nervous and intimidated. You overhear your classmates talking about the great experience they have been having at a different clinical site. Something had happened that allowed them to use their limited skill set when aided by a professional, and they were beginning to feel a lot more comfortable in the clinical setting. You, on the other hand, are still feeling nervous and intimidated every time that you are in clinical, and you feel that your skill set is so limited that you can't really assist anyone with anything. This was me 17 years ago. I was beginning my clinical rotations in radiography at UNMC. We had 6 different clinical sites to rotate to, including Creighton, Methodist, the VA, Children's, Clarkson, and UNMC. While I felt like I was learning something new every day, I felt there was something missing. It was difficult for me to rotate to new clinical sites because I knew absolutely nothing about procedures or protocols at the new site. I wanted to be able to speak to my classmates and acquire knowledge from their successes and failures during their different clinical rotations. But it seemed pretty impossible since we were all so spread out. As classmates, we talked a lot about our clinical experiences when we were in class together, but not in ways that could help each other grow as radiography professionals.
With students attending multiple clinical sites, there are positive and negatives that exist. On the positive side, attending multiple clinical sites is an asset as a future radiographer to learn different ways to perform exams. Exposure to a variety of radiology departments is also positive, as it gives students the opportunity to know if they prefer a clinic environment or a hospital environment. Multiple clinical sites offer more job opportunities for students when they have completed the program. As clinical instructor, I often tell students that as juniors, they are entering into a 2-year job interview at our clinical sites. On the negative side, each student has limited time at each clinical site in order to learn site-specific policies, procedures, and idiosyncrasies. Oftentimes, students have a difficult time completing competencies depending on how they rotate through the clinical sites, as there are limited sites for fluoro and surgery. It is also challenging for students to relearn information if it has been a while since they have been to a certain clinical site.
When I was a new technologist at Good Samaritan Hospital in Kearney, I had just graduated from X-ray school at UNMC, and I was trying to learn all new policies and procedures compared to what I had learned in my clinical experience. I was expected to be able to go to surgery and deal with new surgeons that I did not know, and procedures that weren't foreign to me, but had different ways of performing them than I was used to. I assumed that when I became a technologist, I would know what to do in every situation that I was presented with, but that was far from the truth. In the middle of my 3 to 11 shift, I was told that I would need to finish a procedure that I had never seen or performed with a surgeon who does not like new technologists, and that I had bad experiences with in my short amount of time at Good Sam. I had to go in and relieve a technologist that was going to be completing his shift soon. I was so nervous and distraught about going to do this procedure that I forgot the 2 most important rules of going to the OR. 1, put on a surgical cap, and 2, put on a surgical mask. I walked into the OR of the surgeon who had already screamed at me numerous times without my important surgical attire. As luck would have it, there was a medical student scrubbed into the case with the surgeon. So instead of screaming at me, he looked at the student and nicely said, "We're pretty laid back here. Sometimes we do cases without wearing caps or masks." He smiled at me and then continued the case. I left to go put on my surgical attire. That case could have been the worst of my career, but instead, he taught me what to do for the specific case in a nice tone and was nice to me in the cases that followed.
forward to the present. I have been a technologist for 15 years and a clinical instructor for both the Mary Lanning and UNMC radiography programs for 7 years. I still feel that there is something missing in the clinical aspect of the student's education. What the students are doing now is more than meeting the needs of the program, but I believe that it could be even better. Currently, you can learn from the personal experience of the technologist that you are working with, and you can learn from the experience of others if you are in the right place at the right time. For example, I have often used my trip to the OR without my mask and cap for students that happen to be in the right place at the right time. But all of the students do not get to hear my story and learn from my bad experience. In the future, it could be possible for students to learn not only from the personal experience of technologists that they are working with, but they could also learn from their classmates' experiences as well as their clinical instructors' experiences, much like my personal story. What if students were given the opportunity to participate in an online discussion board with their classmates about their experiences in the clinical setting? What if they were able to communicate openly in an online setting with their clinical instructors from each clinical site and ask them necessary questions? What if they were able to read stories of their clinical instructors' experiences and their classmates' experiences and learn from their successes and failures? For example, after my unfortunate trip to the OR, I never again walked into a surgery case without the proper surgical attire. What if students were given the opportunity to view these experiences and learn from them? I also think that students could benefit from being given specific scenarios that could occur while they're in clinic and see what their responses to the situation would be and what their classmates' responses would be. These examples could make the student's clinical experience even more beneficial and better prepare them for becoming technologists. I came across this quote from William Pollard as I was in the process of coming up with a plan to add this online clinical component. Learning and innovation go hand in hand. The arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. The current clinical education for radiography students at UNMC and Mary Lanning is sufficient in meeting the needs of the students and the program, but even the best can be better. A resolution to the current clinical situation would be to add an online clinical component to the existing clinical curriculum. This online component would consist of a graded discussion board. The discussion board would have 3 sections: a site-specific situation activity, a student experience weekly discussion board, and a question and answer section. As clinical instructors, I am sure that many of you are wondering how you are going to find the time to monitor and participate in a discussion board with all that you already have on your plate in both your professional and personal lives. So I'm going to run through the requirements of the discussion board section and give you an idea of the amount of time that the online clinical component will take. Each month, a clinical instructor from a different site will post a situation activity for the students to complete. It will take the place of their weekly discussion board for that week and will always occur on the 3rd week of the month. For each class, beginning as juniors and lasting until graduation, each clinical instructor will have a total of 3 situation activities based on the number of months and the number of clinical instructors. A situation activity includes a situation that could occur at a specific clinical site. For example, you have completed an outpatient chest x-ray with a technologist, and the technologist steps out of the room to make sure that the patient does not need to go to lab before being dismissed. While the technologist is gone, the patient begins to feel lightheaded and dizzy and feels like they are going to pass out. What do you do? The clinical instructor will post this situation on the discussion board on Sunday of that week. The students will comment on the discussion board their thoughts on the situation and what they think should be done. The student's original post will be due by Wednesday, with additional comments to 2 classmates by Saturday of that week. The clinical instructor will reply to students with comments and suggestions on what to do in that situation. The weekly discussion board will require the clinical instructors to log in and read discussion comments a few times a week. The same format for the weekly discussion board will exist as for the situation activity. The students will post one good experience and one bad experience from their previous clinical week by Wednesday. They will then comment on 2 classmates' posts by Sunday evening. All clinical instructors will need to review student posts to ask questions and help them to acquire knowledge from the good and bad experiences that they have had. Make sure to look for site-specific examples students have posted. The question and answer section of the online clinical component will be used by students to ask site-specific questions to clinical instructors. It is not mandatory that students ask questions, but these questions could be anything from protocols to different procedures to a specific competency that the student needs. The clinical instructors will be required to log into this question and answer section at least a few times per week.
As I stated earlier, I know that all of you are busy individuals and are possibly a little nervous about how to make the time in your work life for this online clinical component. To prevent unnecessary anxiety, we are going to discuss preventing burnout for our team. I've already discussed the expectations of the online discussion board in detail, but I want to assure you that I intend to be very clear with all the expectations of this group. I also want you to be aware that all members of this group will be amazing resources for you if you ever have a question or need to run an idea by someone. We will be working on team building activities during each group meeting, which will help everyone in the group to feel a little more at ease around group members. I also am available for anything that comes up when planning your situation activities, needing discussion board assistance, or coaching a student. Feedback is important for any team. I plan on giving feedback to all of you frequently about group progress and how I feel that the discussion board is going. I will also frequently ask for your feedback as well. I have never led a discussion board like this before, and I will be very open to all of your ideas and suggestions.
Our group as a whole will likely meet many challenges along the way of implementing this online clinical component. As a result, we need to meet frequently to discuss opportunities and obstacles that arise as we move forward. The plan is to meet monthly before implementation, every other month during implementation, and quarterly once the online component has been implemented. We will likely have these meetings over video conference, which we will set up at a future date. Before scheduling the meetings, I would like to get an email from each of you about a day of the week and a time of day that works best for you, and then we will go forward from there. We need commitment from every person on our team in order to make this project a success. Meeting attendance is necessary, as each person is a representative of their clinical site, and each clinical site's voice is extremely important in a positive outcome. I am always available by email, text, or phone, so feel free to choose any of those options if something comes up between meetings.
Next, I wanted to discuss our team goals. Our first goal is to successfully add an online clinical component to the already existing clinical curriculum. In doing this, we want to maintain the already successful curriculum for each program, as well as maintain the successful mission of each program. I have given you copies of the current clinical syllabus and mission statement of both radiography programs for reference. Monitoring the discussion board and knowing how to coach students and answer their questions may be challenging. Keep the syllabus and mission statement handy to aid you in difficult discussion board situations. Also, feel free to contact me or the program directors with extremely difficult situations that may arise.
This timeline offers a little guidance as to what will happen the next few months from the first meeting until the end of the semester. In a few weeks, we will have our first group meeting where we will finalize ideas, make plans, and discuss putting those plans into action. At our June and July meetings, we will move forward with our action plan and finalize our situation activities, making a schedule for the clinical instructors for the entire 2 years of the new junior class, as well as the addition of the online component to the current syllabus. In August, we will begin implementation by putting our online clinical component into the learning management system of each program, which happens to be Canvas for both programs. In September, clinicals will begin mid-month, and we will go live with the online clinical component. Since we will not have the entire month of September, there will not be a situation activity for September, but the weekly discussion board and question and answer section will begin the student's second week of clinical rotation. October through December will be a time for checking in with each other to make sure that everything is running smoothly and meeting if an obstacle arises.
Here is a copy of our first meeting agenda. I plan to make an agenda for each meeting that we have. As you can see, the meetings will last approximately 1 hour and will contain 4 components: a reflection, a group activity, open discussion, and preparation for our next meeting. For the first few meetings, I will supply the reflection and group activity, and moving forward, these 2 meeting components will be shared by everyone. I'm going to give examples of each component so that you have an understanding of what these both mean to us as a group. This is the reflection that I have chosen for our first group meeting. It may be familiar to you, as it is possible that you have read or heard it before. The reflection portion of the meeting is a time to sit and think about our purpose as a group and what it is that we wish to accomplish long term. I chose this reflection because it discusses change starting with the individual. This group that we have has the ability to do many great things, but it all begins with the attitudes and drive of each person as an individual. Without the unique perspectives and skill set that each individual brings to this group, we would not get where we want to go. When it is your turn to choose the reflection, think about a quote or a story that motivates you or helps you to put things in perspective. Each meeting, we will have a group activity. The activity that I have chosen for our first group meeting is the diversity wheel. Our team is a very diverse group of people in that we come from different backgrounds, we are different ages, we all have different years and levels of experience as radiographers, we all have different ideas and ways of doing things. One of the challenges of bringing together such a diverse group of people to achieve one goal is not knowing each other on a personal level. In order to learn to trust each other and use each other as resources, we need to participate in activities to get to know each other and to be able to communicate with each other better. When choosing your activity, try to select something that you think the group will enjoy that will allow our team to become more unified. So far, we have discussed adding the online clinical component to the radiography student clinical curriculum, requirements of each person on this team, and what we hope to accomplish in the coming months. Looking at the big picture, it is important to keep in mind that the purpose of adding the online clinical component is about connecting students with each other and with their clinical sites. These students are your potential new employees and coworkers a few years down the road. Adding this clinical component can make their transition into employment at your facility that much easier for everyone involved. Looking ahead, we will have our first group meeting in a few weeks, and we will move forward with our plan. At this point, are there any questions, comments, or suggestions? Thank you.